Braiding Sweetgrass. Today, as you came in, you will see that there's National Geographic magazines on the tables and art supplies over on that big table. And Ruth's going to give some more instruction about this, but basically we're going to be making art while engaging with the material. So, without further ado, help me welcome Ruth.
Thank you, Jamie. Is the mic working?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I think there's a lot of people who were here last week and a few new people, too. So I want to start us with a prayer. This is a Native American prayer that I found from a Jesuit site. I hope that isn't cultural appropriation. Thank you from the Jesuits. I invite you to join me in prayer. Oh, only for so short a while you have loaned us to each other, because we take form in your act of drawing us, and we take life in your painting us, and we breathe in your singing us. But only for a short while have you loaned us to each other, because even a drawing cut in obsidian feather fades, and the green feathers, the crown feathers of the Quetzal bird lose their color, and even the sounds of the waterfall die out in the dry season. So we too, because only for a short while have you loaned us to each other. An Aztec Indian prayer. Now, I was always been hostile to the idea of making art because I'm not very good at it, but I've come around to it, and studies show that you actually focus better and remember things if you're doing something with your hands. I have a second idea for today, which is to take some of the ideas that are in the book, Braiding Sweetgrass, and think about where we want to go from here with those ideas as a church. And those ideas could be in the form of something that we present to council, something we present to Faith in Action. I will take any ideas that you want addressed, talked about, considered to Faith in Action to our next meeting. And I will take your art if you want, or you can take your art home. It's yours to do it, which you wish. The book is Braiding Sweetgrass. Let's see if I can get this in.
Now a special performance
No,
from our friend
no,
John
I just
Baptiste.
use music.
Now a special performance from our friend John Baptiste.
Yes.
Now a special performance from our friend John Baptiste. Now.
What do we do for the next one? No, I just wanted to know what we were going to do next
So
one.
next time, can we lower the tripod?
I learned about this book when Professor Nancy Lee from Amherst University came and talked to us about the creationists in the Native American cultures and how they compare with our stories in Genesis about the creation. And one of the things that she recommended was that we do a book group, and we are now doing the book group for those of us who have read it or want to read it or partway through it or are going to read it and want to talk about it. It called to me because of the Native American themes, and because I feel like I don't know very much about Native American cultures, and I want to be a responsible person and learn about my neighbors and learn about their cultures. I want to learn that history. But for other people, this book really resonates because of the environmental themes. And for this author, they're all of one piece. She starts the book with telling the creation myth, which is a woman spiraling from the heavens down to a pond, and she's spiraling like a whirligig, and she has no place to land until the turtle comes by, and the turtle shell is there, but there's nothing to eat on the turtle shell until the beaver goes down to the bottom of the pool and gets the mud and puts it across the turtle shell. So that is part of their original creation myth. And she talks about the 4 sacred plants in her culture, in the Potawatomi culture, the most sacred of which is the sweetgrass, which is not something that should be sold or bartered or used just for general purposes. It's a sacred grass that's used for their ceremonial purposes. She divides the book into 4 sections where you read about growing it, and harvesting it, and using it for the ceremony, and burning it, and the cycle returns. She also talks about the fact that she is a scientist, she's a botanist, and she's an ecologist. And she talks about that, coming to that educational tradition as a Native American. And the thing that she wanted to learn when she went to college and she told me she wanted to study botany was she wanted to learn why asters and goldenrod are so beautiful together. And the professor was very dismissive. I mean, they let her study botany, but he said, well, that's the problem. That's not a scientific question. There's nothing in that science can tell you. And so she learned science, which was just what we know, the names of things and what they do, but not the mystery of why these 2 things look so beautiful together. She didn't learn that too much later. And it turns out that the rods and the cones in your eyes have receptors for different colors. And there's one particularly to catch these 2 colors together. And if you stare at the violet and the one flower for long enough and look away at the blank page, you will see the golden and the goldenrod. And it also turns out, she tells us in the book, that bees have those same ability on their eyes, even though bees' eyes are very different from ours, because they are going to pollinate the flowers. I included a picture of Goethe, the author of Faust, a German poet famous for writing Faust, because he was not only a poet but a scientist, and she is not only a scientist but aspires to be a poet, to learn about the beauty in the world and to talk about the beauty in the world. I would encourage you to read certainly the chapters on the strawberries and on gratitude, because strawberries are the first fruit that come out in the spring, and they're telling you that life is beginning again, and the cycle is beginning again, and you're going to have sweetness. They're very, I can't do justice to their symbolism, but they're very beautiful stories about strawberries. There's some wild strawberries. This is a picture of memorial to Fighting Bob, the father, in the Wisconsin Capitol. It's a picture of me in my t-shirt with my favorite bird, which is a northern flicker, which also features in the book. Not a great deal, but there's a reference to flickers. To sort of highlight the fact that when we in the dominant culture, in the white culture, admire somebody, we have the ability and we do certainly have the desire to put up a statue of them. This Wisconsin Capitol happens to be on the land of the ancestral lands of the Ho-Chunk people. There was no memorial that I could find there when I was there about a month ago, acknowledging that. Although they do. That's how I first learned the name. That's how I first learned the name Ho-Chunk, was from the casino. They got this statue of womankind from the Columbia Exposition. I guess even though they couldn't think of a particular woman they wanted to honor at that time, they did want to honor women. So it wouldn't be such a stretch to honor the Ho-Chunk and the Potawatomi. This is some pictures of a neighborhood near us at North Edgebrook in Chicago, which has street signs which show Indian names, Native American names, I'm sorry. Shouldn't be saying Indian. And I just learned from a friend of mine who lives near there about a week ago, that it's likely that those streets were named for Native Americans because Billy Caldwell, the Caldwell Woods, the forest preserve, was a Potawatomi chief. This is a picture of a gardening technique that's known in the Native American community. It's called the Three Sisters, where you plant 3 seeds in one hole to grow the corn, which grows first, provides a stalk for the beans, which circle around it, and then the squash grow along the ground, finally, and suppress the weeds. Beautiful metaphor for cooperation and reciprocity, and actually a good gardening technique. This is a picture of not my favorite bird, but one of my husband's favorite birds. It also features a little bit in the story. What was interesting to me about the way she writes is you open a chapter and there's a theme, there's clearly a theme. It's gratitude or reciprocity or the damage we've done to the earth. But she doesn't always tell you where she is. And she's an academic, so she's studied in different parts of the country, and she's worked in different parts of the country. But this is a West Coast oyster catcher, and he has actually caught an oyster. He has one in his mouth. And this goes along with the part of the story where she's talking about the damming of the rivers and the tributaries on the West Coast in Oregon, which have harmed the salmon so much, and the efforts to reverse that, engineer those dams so that they have the ability to swim upstream and spawn and be part of the healthy ecosystem, just like this little guy was. The author seems to be trying to persuade me that plants are beings the way people are beings, the way my friends are beings. And I'm not quite there yet because it feels a little bit like animism, but she did talk about how an entire grove of trees will somehow decide if they're going to bear fruit or not that year, or if they're going to wait a year. And they communicate through the roots. And this is more pertaining to the part of the book where she lived, where they harvest maple syrup. And these are cellular systems in the stems of the plants that bring in water and minerals and bring out sugars. And generally they move in one direction, but sometimes they're bi-directional, and they've all gotten together and somehow communicated with each other and decided to bear fruit. This is not so much a bibliography, and I need to change this. This is more a list of some of the books that I have enjoyed or recommend on Native American themes. The Yellow Raft in Blue Water by Michael Doris, The Night Watchman, or anything by Louise Erdrich, really. 2 books by Tommy Orange, and in the category that's somewhat fiction and memoir, there are a couple books by Sherman Alexie, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, and The Lone Ranger and Tonto, Fist Fight in Heaven. And then, because this book reminded me so much of another book, A River Runs Through It and Other Stories by Norman McLean, which is more Presbyterian. Those are my faithfuls. Because she's Native American and she's Potawatomi, our author is going to get to, and she takes her time getting to, the fact that Potawatomi were displaced from their ancient lands west, and then further west, and then further west. And she takes her time in really just getting to describing that pain. I think because she wants to keep readers like me coming back and finishing the book. This is a black ash, which is used in Native American culture to make baskets. It's a beautiful and functional plant. And this is the beachhead in Oregon when they're trying to help with salmon recovery. At the end of the book, she describes an ecological disaster, which is what happened to Lake Onondaga, which is the lake right where Syracuse, New York is. Syracuse is on the lake. And there's so much pollution there that it's a Superfund site. It was one time the dirtiest Superfund site. They are cleaning it up now, and the progress is ongoing. But our author always wants us to, I think, to have some sense of encouragement that things can be fixed. As she says, the earth isn't broken, it's our relationship with the earth that's broken. And one of the first things that come back, even in an area where nothing can grow, are lichen. And so this is a beautiful chart of the variety of kinds of lichen. Now we get to the kind of me being prescriptive, maybe. This is a land acknowledgement statement that I wrote using some tools on the internet, the Native American, the Native Peoples of Canada website, and the Oak Park Public Library, but has a land acknowledgement statement. I put it in the first person, just for myself. I acknowledge that the land and water where my house of worship stands in Oak Park is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Peoria, Potawatomi, Ochethi, Sakuin, Kaskaskia, Kickapoo, and Miami peoples. My relationship to this place is one of reverence, and my commitment is to inscribe that respect into the very grounds I will. I will honor this land by continuing to act as a steward, not only through the financial support of my spiritual community, but also by recognizing my role in caring for the shared spaces, like the neighboring park and library, that connect us all to this earth. May my actions reflect the deepening responsibilities to peoples who have cared for this place since time immemorial. Jared, I think you sent me a note this morning. You have a land acknowledgement statement too.
I don't, but yesterday at the installation of the Bishop in New York City for the ELCA, they had a land acknowledgement. So it's really beautiful.
That's what you sent me to us.
Okay, so this is the installation of the Bishop Katrina Foster in New York City. And this is the pastor, Justin Johnson. Oyiso, my name is Reverend Dr. Justin Johnson, and I bring greetings from the Cherokee Nations, the Cherokee Nation and the East Coast Cherokees. As we gather for this historic moment, let us pause and give thanks to our ancestors. When I was a child growing up in Brooklyn, I was taught about the history of how the Dutch bought Manhattan for just $24. The lore is meant to show how wise the Dutch were and how naive Native Americans were. The truth is that the Munsee people had a different understanding of land. What the Dutch paid for was land rental agreement. This shows the wisdom of the Munsee people. I am here to notify you, you are behind in rent. So we will pass the plate now. In all seriousness, we do acknowledge the ancestors of the Lenape people who were part of the Munsee collective of tribes, villages, and clans. We give thanks to their hundreds of years of walking and caring for Manhattan, Manhattan. We pray for them now as they are still caretakers of the land. We pray for their tribes in New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. We pray for their tribal lands, the people who walk, and pray that treaties get honored as states look to eliminate tribal lands. We pray for all Native people who walk on Turtle Island, who care and protect the land, who hold the sacred, and who preserve the original language. We once welcomed the European stranger and refugees. Help us to keep that vision of welcome alive and sacred. Help us to live in ways where we are generous with all we have. We pray for the day when the land will once again be sacred and not scarred, when we see community as gift and see God in one another. We pray for the day when the people once again come together as tribe. May this day be a blessing, as is every day.
Thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you very much. That's wonderful. I was going to do an easel and a sketchboard with some ideas, but we don't have an easel, so if you excuse me 1 second, I'll get a piece of paper and write things down. Get a big piece of paper. No, I'm going to get a big, thanks. So recognizing that our church already cares for the land and cares about other people, cares about the rights of the non-dominant culture. What is this book calling us to do? What are some ideas about what this book is calling us to do? Would you do that?
Can you repeat what she had said?
I think you said take more care, is that right?
Care of the earth.
Christine, I know you do that because you're on the building and grounds and you take care of our...
Well, I just weed.
Let me ask you this, can anybody be taught to weed so they only pull up the weeds and not the important plants?
It's hard to do in the fairy garden. It's hard to know. I'm no expert myself.
You can use an app, like a plant ID app, and you can take pictures of the foliage if you're confused whether it's a lot of beautiful things are invasive species, so it's hard to tell.
Also, even native plants can get out of hand a little bit, so you have to keep everything in balance. Aunt Tanner is much better at this than I'm basically.
Well, Ann Tanner is also the person who's going to correct me if I'm wrong on identification of any birds, because she knows birds better than I do, so.
I only could hear part of what you were
Oh.
saying, Christine. Is this a question about weeds or are weeds?
Can you tell the difference between weeds
Oh.
and the
I think it has, a weed is anything that's growing where you don't want it to. So, depending on what you're gardening for or planting for, you have plants that you want, plants that you don't want, whether it's a weed. Some people consider milkweed a weed, but now milkweed's very popular plant in a garden as a plant to take care of it. So,
Ann, do you know about planting for the pollinators to help the animals that travel through here?
there's quite a bit in the news, and on TV online about native gardens, and even just a small patch the size of the tables for will help migrating birds or butterflies, insects, and by leaving your garden, with the stalk still up, like the milkweed or any of your plants, really, there are bugs that lay eggs in the stalk.
you talk about these issues, and I'm remembering now as you talk about that, an adult ed session which had 3 or 4 experts from the Forest Reserve, and Elaine Pierce's daughter was here presenting on equity in parkland and trees that are planted in the city versus trees that are planted in the suburbs. So I think we focus on that already. But for me, somebody who's not good in a garden, my house plant ratio is about 30%. 30% of any plants that are given to me survive the first year in my house. But for me, I discovered Faith in Action asked us to check all of our mission partners, and just as a due diligence to see they were doing good work. And I was assigned or volunteered to check on BUILD. I don't know if you know what BUILD is. BUILD is a community organization that focuses on helping at-risk youth in Austin and other communities on the west side and on the south side as well. Now they have a beautiful new building. They also have a website, and I was noodling on their website to see if it actually worked, see if it was up to date. And it is, and you can sign up for some free classes on organic gardening that they give on Saturday mornings about once a month, just as a gift to the community. They just would like your signature. So I've been going to those and finding out about how to use compost and make soil in small containers, and what containers are safe to use for food versus flowers, and overwintering and harvesting. So that's a good resource that we have in our community, is the urban gardener who runs those classes at BUILD. She's lovely. Jim, I know would you like to speak on this a little bit? You brought us.
Talking about native gardens, people might be aware of West Coast Wildlands, which is an organization that promotes native gardens.
It's called West Coast Wild Ones.
Actually, it's a statewide, might even be a nationwide organization, but this is the West Coast branch of Wild Ones. And every spring, they have a native plant sale, and they have some really nice ways to purchase economically groups of plants that are focused on certain things. Like you can buy a kit, maybe 10 or 15 different plants that are good in the shade. They used to have, and I think they still have one that's called the Pollinators Kit. So it attracts butterflies and bees, and so you can get those as a kit and not have to, figure out for yourself and do your own research what plants are good for this or that. They have a kit that's good for sunshine, where it's full sun. So they've done some of that research for you, and it's very helpful and economical. So in the springtime, they have an online purchasing time, and then you go pick it up locally, and then they have it when it's ready. But it's a great resource, I think.
Thank you.
I think the farmer's market also has native plants. Some of the vendors there have native plants. I don't know, does anybody know about that? I think you can get them there. And I don't know what about our, what's that,
Sager?
what?
Sager?
No, the place that has the plaques. I can't.
Conservatory.
The conservatory. Yeah, I don't know what the conservatory may do.
I'd say the farmer's market, they're so knowledgeable when you can ask them. The biggest thing is like where to plant it, how many hours of sun it gets, how much improvement it has. But I think one of the hard parts is, at least in my garden, earwigs and Japanese beetles devour my beautiful work at night. I'll see their damage, and it's tempting to want to use a pesticide to kill them, but you can't put a pesticide out for them without killing your butterflies and all your other friends. So there's a lot of organic tricks, like wrapping up a newspaper, getting it wet, putting it in a plastic bag. It looks ugly, but you put it in the garden, and all the earwigs go to that overnight. And then in the morning, you can dispose of that in your garbage. I know it's using plastic and newspaper, but you're not killing any of the butterflies or other things.
That's helpful. Thank
I just want to highlight the work that Jim has done with our church, our building, working so hard to keep it carbon neutral, or, looking at the energy that this building demands. And do you want to speak to the work you've done with our building?
Yeah.
Can you up here and back there?
Oh, if you could speak up a little bit more, that would be
Why
awesome.
don't you stand up and speak to the.
Well, I wanted to start by saying it's not just me. We have a team here, a green team. Art is part of it. Paul Dickerson, Susan Buchanan, fairly involved. And one of the big projects we did like 3 or 4 years ago was to try to get the church signed up for community solar, so that we could get our electricity from solar, not directly but indirectly. And we were finally able to make that happen. It took some effort, but we're signed up for 4 different solar farms. We're a fairly large account. We're maybe 30 to 40 times what a normal household would be in terms of our energy use. So getting our one account transferred over to renewable energy has a lot of impact in terms of reducing the need for carbon fuels. And that's sort of the drive, is carbon neutrality is about, and this is, I was going to say, I think the book has a subtitle that mentions indigenous wisdom and science. And I think that's what we're trying to incorporate in this movement, is the science of climate and what are the solutions to it. And the number one solution is to stop the use of fossil fuels. And right now, Illinois gets about 30% or 35% of its electricity from fossil fuels, only about 15% from renewables. It's gone up lately, it used to be 10. And the rest is nuclear, which you can say is clean or not clean, depending on your outlook. But so we were able to get our account switched over to renewables. And also through the Interfaith Green Network, we got about 7 other congregations, other houses of worship, to switch over to renewable energy. So we've had a pretty big impact. In fact, community solar got to be so popular that people would try to sign up and were told, well, you'll have to wait another year because we're still building. Everything we've built has been subscribed to. And so now we're in a period actually where companies that we've contacted in the last month have said, yes, we're going to have things coming online, and now's a good time to try to subscribe as individuals even. So condo owners, and so some of you may have seen, we've had some brochures out up in the lounge occasionally, and I've got some over there if you're interested, indicating how to make contact with some of the companies and to get some good information from unbiased sources like Citizens Utility Board, which has a list of the current vendors. So currently they're saying there is availability, and you might only have to wait a month or 2 to get signed up. So condo owners, apartment dwellers, individual households, anybody with their own electric account can subscribe to community solar and switch from. You would still be getting your delivery. The wires would still be owned by a ComEd. They'd still be responsible for keeping your electricity going when you're about it. But you would be subscribing and helping to promote the development of clean energy, primarily solar, through this program. So I encourage people, as something fairly simple, it takes a little bit of work investigating and calling and so on, but we've got some information to help you, and we're certainly willing to help guide you along if you run into some roadblocks. So there's a sign-up sheet there if you want more information or if you want somebody to help you. One of the organizations in Oak Park now is the Oak Park Climate Action Network, which has been very active, and I think Art has been going to those meetings and is participating. They have a program now called Climate Coaches, or if you have a question even about composting or anything, you contact them and tell them what you're interested in learning about, and they'll contact you with someone who's knowledgeable in the subject. For, you know, a short conversation just to get you started, not to be a thorough advisor and to guide you along for a long time, but to be a short time advisor and point you in the right direction. It's very helpful for people who are just getting started.
What was the name of that?
Oak Park Climate Action Network. So OPCAN is the initials. OPCAN.
The website.
Go to their website.
The website is opcan.org. Very simple.
Yeah.
opcan.org.
It's a great website.
It would be helpful to have a list of the web links for the organizations that you referred.
Okay.
Okay.
So there-
What about
so-
the village? Does the village, has the village signed up for,
Yeah.
the renewable?
I'm not sure if the village has per se. I know the park district has been very active in actually installing solar panels, which is really the more complete solution. All the park district, I think all the park district buildings have solar panels on them.
I just wanted to say, I signed up for the Clearway Energy, solar energy for about, it covers about 80% of my electricity bill. And I get separate bills, one from ComEd and one from Clearway. And I feel virtuous and like I'm doing something good in the process, so.
If you call Clearway, you can probably get that closer to 100%.
Oh, okay.
The companies take your electric bill and see what your use has been over the last year, and they estimate from that how many solar panels they need to allocate to you from their solar farm that's on 2 or 3 football field size solar
But it
farm.
works and it's reliable and no problem, so.
Yeah.
So at your condo, you have individual,
Bills, yeah,
yeah,
pay your own.
Yeah, if you get a ComEd bill,
yeah.
you can sign up for that.
Well, at our condo, our comment bill is estimated, because first, I don't know, there's something about hooking into reading the meters, and they're working on solving it, but.
The condos typically will have a common account, so the common areas, the meeting rooms, the hallways, the elevators, those accounts, in fact, ours condo has switched over to community solar, and there's some others that we've contacted in the village that have converted. So it's more than just the individual accounts, you get a larger group account.
Go ahead, Chris.
I guess I was just wondering how Oak Park is doing, like on their report card about this. I feel like we were award winning a few years ago, and I don't know if we are still at that level.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the awards, but they had a report, also 3 or 4 months ago at the library, where they admitted that they were behind in their goals. They have a climate action plan. It's called Climate Ready Oak Park.
Right.
And entails a lot of things, including biodiversity and preservation of green space and so on. But they have goals of getting away from fossil fuel energy, and they're behind. They're behind on that. But they're asking for community support. They're asking for large buildings to report their usage so that they can monitor it, and that's, that's taken a lot of public relations and publicity to get building owners to really understand that it will be helpful for the whole village to do this. But they do now have a very active sustainability director in the system. And she has been very proactive in terms of meeting with other organizations, getting their support, and helping to spread the word. So that's very helpful. The village has been very helpful in the last year or two. In spreading the word about the benefits of doing this. And you see, they also have a grant program. Ann and I were just talking about it this morning. Up to $10,000 for energy efficiency projects based on income. So, there are a lot of opportunities. It takes some digging, it takes some phone calls. But us feel like, and this affects the biodiversity, the whole thing about insects being, diminished is not only because of pollution, but also because of climate, and where their habitat is maybe not what it's supposed to be. And so we feel like climate's going in the wrong direction, and we really need to make some speedy changes. And there's a lot of resistance to that from fossil fuel industry and so on. So in many cases, it's up to us as individuals to help protect creation, basically.
And the green team, does the green team have plans going forward or things that we can be doing not only as individuals but as a church?
Well, we are continuing, and this has been an effort to reduce our energy use, specifically in our heating and cooling system. But this is an old building, and what people say with old buildings and old homes, it can be very difficult or costly to make changes and to make things the way they should be. And it's taken a lot of investigation, and again, Art and Paul have done a lot of work with building and grounds, John, with building and grounds to investigate what it is that we need to do, and how do our radiators really work, and how does the boiler work, and what's not working. So that's really the main area we're working on now. That plus publicizing the idea about community solar and getting people to sign up for that.
Thanks so much, Jim. Thank you.
I just wanted to add maybe a little bit of the most recent data Jim mentioned, Lindsay. I just wanted to mention a little of data from Oak Park about solar usage in Oak Park. So Lindsay, who is the village's sustainability director that Jim mentioned, has been able to get data from ComEd that the total number of households in Oak Park who are involved in solar in one way or another is now over 5%. So it's at the point where solar is becoming a mainstream energy source rather than just a niche technology that people think, well, he's really cool, he got solar on his roof. There's enough people in Oak Park, around 210, 220 households have solar panels on their roof, and another almost 300 are enrolled in community solar. So if you're not already enrolled, it's a trend.
And it's an ongoing trend.
And it's an ongoing trend.
Despite what may be happening at the federal level.
Art, can you describe some of the things that the OpCan offers individuals to reduce their carbon footprint in their home in addition to solar?
Okay, Jim mentioned the OPCAN climate coach. And if you go on opcan.org, there's four main functions on that website right now. So one is the climate coaches, and if you just click on the thing that talks about climate coaches, it takes you to a little chart, and it says, I think it's 13 different technology ideas that you might be interested in. Among them EVs and gardening and solar and electrification of your house. So there's 13 different categories that you might or might not be interested in, and you fill out a little bit more information about where you live. Do you live in a house? Do you live in a condo? And then hit send. And within probably 3 or 4 days, a climate coach who has some experience in those specific areas will get back to you. So that's one thing that's on opcan.org. Another thing that's on opcan.org is a list of resources. Somebody a few minutes ago said, is there a list of resources? And the best available list, rather than doing our own, would be on opcan.org, and it lists resources, and it lists, I don't know, 50 or 60 websites that you can go to and get more information. And then another thing on opcan.org is contractors. So if you're interested in installing a heat pump in your house, or an induction cooktop. All those contractors who have experience in that area are listed on opcan.org. And then the fourth thing on opcan.org is it's a blog with accumulated over time with ideas that people in opcan.org have had, and they want to add that to the mix. So there's a lot of resources that are available, and they're locally focused, so I would encourage you to take a look at opcan.org. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we have a lot of great ideas for things we're doing. I think we have a lot of great ideas for things we're doing and things that we continue doing. We have care for the earth, plant pollinators, native gardens, leaf stalks from spent plants so that insects can lay eggs in the winter in the compost, organic gardening. This is one of the organizations that Jim knew about, West Cook Wild Ones. Use solar-powered energy. First United now uses solar, community solar. Oak Park Climate Action Network, which is under opcan.org. They have climate coaches available, a list of resources for information, a list of contractors who can install solar panels, heat pumps, and things like that. And we also have a proposed land acknowledgement statement to acknowledge that the Native American peoples were here before we were. How do people feel about that as a proposal for our church to have that as part of our practice and an acknowledgement?
I'm curious, last week you mentioned that statements like that have an impact on Native populations. I don't remember how you worded it. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that. Like, what is the purpose and benefit of a statement like this?
The purpose and benefit is to acknowledge the fact that they were here, that although they may not have a monument in our state capital or in Wisconsin state capital, they may not have a plaque, but they are not erased from history, they are not erased from our community, that we know that they are here and we're here. Also, there are many parts of the book where our author is describing the use of the naming of a mountain. We call it Mount Marcy, but it has a Native American name that is a sacred name, so we wouldn't just talk about it as we're talking now or talk on the street. So to acknowledge that there's sacred parts of their tradition that are different from our tradition or maybe similar to our tradition. I think it goes to like the first step of reparations, but I'm not suggesting we need to do reparations, but certainly the first step is acknowledging what has happened. And I feel like I don't know enough about what has happened. I want to learn more about our history with the Native Americans. But acknowledging that they were here is the first step toward doing it.
I think it raises consciousness.
I think so too.
I mean, a lot of people just don't think about that. And so a statement like that, if you're confronted with a statement like that from time to time, various places where you are, it raises consciousness.
Thank you, Jim.
It just points out the extent of the erasure
That's
of
right.
those cultures. It's pretty extensive, pretty thorough. But I was going to ask, and you may have already done this, if some of the local indigenous peoples organizations have had any input with that statement, or if that's something that would be worth.
You know, I don't actually know. Mine is modeled off of the libraries because I was more concerned with factually who was on this land and getting that right. The public library is right next door to us. So if these Native peoples had their traditional and ancestral homeland, which included the library, then logically it also includes the church. But I do have let's let's see, what source is this from? You asked about local, right?
There's a website where you can type in your location, or it'll get your location, and it will tell you all of this. It'll
Yes.
tell you, yeah.
And you could use, there's one that's .ca Canada, it's
Yeah.
Native Peoples Canada. This is a land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes and respects Indigenous peoples as traditional stewards of this land and the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. And then I have a website that you can listen to individual Native Americans talk about what it means to them. Well, that's from Northwestern University, so that is local. Yes, Ken?
I don't know if you all have been listening to the My Revolution articles on Channel 11 this week, but one of the things that becomes very obvious is, as you hear the history of the early settlements here, bringing up to the Revolution, one of the things that we probably don't recognize is that there are very few places left that are native lands of Native Americans. Their land was all taken away from them, and they were all moved. And so to say that the people who lived here were this was their original land, no, it wasn't. These were people who were taken away from Florida and the East Coast and moved over this way. And then after they got here, so many of them were moved up. I lived up in Minneapolis and worked with American Indians up there. There's 7 or 8 tribes that are up there that are from originally their origins go way back. So there are very few lands today in the United States that were of the original lands of the tribes, even who are there now. And the tribes have been so much destroyed. Most of them, a large number of the tribes have just been completely annihilated by us. I mean, the history of what was happening during the Revolution is really very negative. If you haven't seen that series, I would encourage you to look it up and become aware of just how ugly our culture has been in its development. All this feeling of history of the greatness of what was being developed it was totally hostile. And so when we talk about preserving the lands for the original people who owned it, well, this is not the land that those original people owned.
I think you make some very good points, some sobering points about our history.
It's very sobering, and they've done just a tremendous job, I think, of being honest about that in that series. And I would encourage you to watch it. And at the same time, I think it's important for us to recognize the history of the natives, but also to recognize that their history has been totally changed.
And because they were moved and forcibly moved often many, many times and annihilated. That's one of the reasons that I like that Canadian website, because it's almost like interwoven flags, and there'll be some blue, which are the Ottawa, and there'll be some pink, which are the Sauk, and then you get an area where it's both of them had traditional lands there, or because they were nomadic, moved in there during seasons. So the Canadian map gives you an idea of how people were moving. Yes, Catherine?
I just wanted to quickly add, in the spirit of mutualism and interconnectedness, the example of just the reminder that there's a preschool during the week. And I'm just like flooded with memories of when we put in the rain garden and the changes, and how the preschool uses this environment. We go to Scoville Park and Austin Gardens, and always out to here. And the rain garden, we learn the different plants and why they're native plantings, and how all of this kind of interconnects in ways that maybe if you come on Sundays and not during the week, you don't, and of course you just don't see the intergenerational integrated ways in which First United's decisions to do these things have rippling effects for everybody in ways that you might not even notice or be able to see.
Thank you, that's such a lovely thought to end on. Jamie's reminding me that we need to
I hate to cut this.
say goodbye for now, or say we'll see you upstairs for now. Thank you, everybody.
So I hate to be the one to cut this great conversation short. I feel like we're really getting into some things there. Next week is Thanksgiving weekend, so we will not be having adult ed next Sunday. The following Sunday, December 7th, we will again be having some representation from Faith in Action. Several members of the Faith in Action Committee will be here to speak on what kinds of things Faith in Action is doing, particularly in relation to just the chaotic political climate that we're in right now and all of the impacts that that's having on various people in our community. So they will be talking about what Faith in Action is doing, how you can get involved, and then also just like how to cope with the stress of it all, which I think we're all kind of doing imperfectly, but doing as well as we can. So we hope to see all of you December 7th for that panel.